All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Muzilog Woman show. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Sade Archer, looking a little different today. Today, we wanted to bring on a very special guest, Miss Santa Molina-Marshall, new author of the book Running Through Darkness, Memoir of a Spiritual Warrior. It's a little bit about Santa. She has been a licensed clinical social worker for over 30 years. She is a holistic psychotherapist. She specializes in trauma and somatic experiences, and I'm so excited to have her on. So, Santa, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. Yes, my name is Santa, and I'm originally from the Dominican Republic. And I say that because that's kind of one of the first sources of trauma that I've experienced, and that was migrating to this country when I was 4 years old and showing up. People in my family showed up at different times, like were brought over at different times, and the incredible challenge of just acclimating for my parents to being in a country that wasn't very welcoming, a country where they didn't speak the language, a country where they didn't have their professions, and the impact that they had on my parents and then consequently on us children. So that's where I come from. I grew up in New York City. What I can tell you is that I have been in the field of trauma for 35 years now. I'm a graduate of Hunter College School of Social Worker, a School of Social Work. Sorry about that. And I do this work because I wanted my family to be well. You know, most children work so hard to change the dynamics in their family. And so I grew up in a home where my father he's now passed, an alcoholic, very functional. My mother had major depression, non functional. And there were 6 children left at that time. And I got raised by my sisters who resented having to be mothers at an age where they were still children, my elder sisters. That's where I come from. And I wanted to fix my family. I wanted to help my brothers who were forever into drugs and incarceration. I wanted to assist my brother who is schizophrenic, also passed away. Most of my family has now passed away. And I don't think that's a coincidence, right? It is the conditioning. So I have a lot to say about throwing people into a system that they know nothing about and the level of shame that comes from that. So I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and I've dedicated my life to working with survivors. I work with trauma in general. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner, a licensed independent social worker. I'm a yoga teacher, meditation teacher.
Okay.
I'm a Reiki master. And what else am I leaving out? I'm an interfaith minister. And I like saying all of that because, again, it's not like I decided, let me just study forever, right? I was searching for how do I heal myself? How do I feel better? And going to a talk therapist was great, but it just wasn't enough, right? So that's who I am. And that's why I wrote this book, Running Through Darkness, because that's what I felt like I did my entire childhood and teenage and even young adulthood was just running, trying to figure out there had to be something different. Yeah. And that's what my story is about. The subtitle is From Trauma to Triumph, because I believe that my life is a miracle. You know, the fact that I have 4 siblings that passed away at a young age, right? That all adds to yeah, I'm a miracle. And guess what? So can you be a miracle, right? Sexual
Exactly.
violence is so prevalent. 1 in 6 boys get sexually abused. 1 in 3 girls at any given time are being sexually abused. I'm not the only one. And so I wanted to say, hey, there's hope and we can heal and we can become triumphant. That's a long introduction. Thank you
No,
for the time.
that is a very it's a necessary introduction because we need to know all the facets of, who you are. Like you said, regular talk therapy for a lot of people is just it's not enough. So having gotten all the accolades, the certifications, going through all the teachings and everything, and just finding out who you are, is it's very needed in order to become a holistic provider, for people who need that holistic care. And that kind of leads me into my next question, which, going off of you being from the DR, the Dominican Republic,
Mhm.
do you feel like that, how do you feel like that affected in terms of your view of the education that you got going through, especially graduate school in social work? Because myself, currently being a master's in social work student, seeing how westernized the curriculum, the teachings are, how did you take that in and then learn, like, okay, yeah, this is not enough for someone who's been through the experiences
Mhm.
like myself. So
Mhm.
basically asking, like, um the western uh the
Mhm.
western teachings
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
social work and therapy and treatment, how are you able
Mhm.
to turn that into something that could work for people of either African descent, Caribbean descent, who have been through all these different things in life?
Mhm. Well, one of the things that, and mind you, to be fair to the formal educational systems, I graduated 35, 38 years ago. So I hope, I pray that they're doing something different today. Yeah, but when I graduated, yeah, it was all very clinical and helping. Right. So there were two tracks. I chose the group track. I wanted to do group work, but it was either you were doing clinical or you were doing helping, right? You were doing the social work that's more about case management, resources, advocacy, which is great. But I knew at an early age that wasn't it. I mean, that is indeed very important, and my family needed all that advocating and services and help, right? But it wasn't getting to the core. It was just enabling. Yeah, and I say that with much respect because people who need help are not necessarily being enabled. But in this systemic, racial, oppressive environment, I think that it is about enabling. It's
Yes.
about, they never taught my mother anything about being here, taught her how to become independent, right? Or my father. As a matter of fact, the family was split because back then, I know I'm not sharing about school and I'll get to it in a minute, but back then, my mother and father could not live in the same home if they were going to get financial support. My mother could not have a husband in the house. So imagine the level of shame for my family, my mother, my father. He had to hide when the social workers showed up, right? And so what I learned is that the career that I was going into was for people who are really hurt, damaged, unable to take care of themselves and their families. That's what I learned, right? I didn't learn that your typical neurotic, that would be Santa, needs support and can access mental health exploration, right? They only showed me the folks, they only talked about the folks that were out in the street drugging, as though, and of course, majority people of color, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the other thing, I can tell you what they didn't teach me, Sade. They didn't say it's okay to pray with people. They said, nope, no religion. They didn't say I could touch people. By
Yes.
the way, I didn't mention that I'm also a massage therapist and Reiki healer, right? That for me to hold somebody's hand and just say, talk to me, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm present, was a violation of
Of
boundaries.
ethics. Yes.
Ethics. And maybe it was a countertransference, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so they didn't teach me how to be with people. They taught me theory, and it was important. It was really important, right? To have a concept of a container for where I learn about mental health, mental illness, right? How to serve people, how to take care of myself. But they didn't really teach me how to serve people of color. Everything that I instinctively do today was not allowed. Yeah. And so I think that I'm hoping that today there's a lot more. I know that there's a lot more focus on mindfulness, there's a lot more focus on somatic work of the body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's not something that they didn't even have dance therapy or art therapy when I went to social work school. So it's changing. But it is also the other thing I want to say about the Western kind of teachings and therapy models is that it leaves out. When I say to someone, hey, are you a person of faith? It's one of the questions on my intake. I ask about spirituality and faith. When they say yes, I says, well, if you ever want to break out into prayer, let's do it. Right? If you're not, if you're an atheist, and I've worked with plenty of atheists, because, sometimes it's hard to understand the relationship we have with God when there's so much suffering on this planet. It's like, what is going on, right? But I can have conversations with people. I can tell them, Sade, that there was a time in my life where I was so disappointed, hurt, and angry at God that I was like, ain't no God. That is for people who are uneducated, I said. People who need to believe in something because they don't think they can. And that may have lasted, at most, that may have lasted 3 months. Because here's what happened to me. I found out that without faith, that faith gives me hope. And without hope, I can't function. There's too much going on in this world to get up again and do
Yes.
what? The same thing? See more people getting killed? See my brothers getting, it just drives me insane, right? But having faith gives me hope. And so I realized after like maybe 30 days or so that I did not want to get up without faith. And so I told myself, even if this God thing is really for the people who are not that strong, and even if it's only an illusion, pretend, Santa, pretend, because you have to get up. You have to keep moving. And I pretended. And before I knew it, I had a new relationship with God. Do you want me to tell you what it is?
Yes.
Yeah. My relationship with God today is understanding that God is not a good or bad father, that God does not punish or judge, but God is pure loving energy. Yeah. And many people call it by many different names. I acknowledge that. That's why I became an interfaith minister. I don't care what you're calling it, God is God. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And God's in my life has been there to say, it's okay. You can handle this. So God gives me courage. God doesn't make my life easier. This is my definition, and I hope not to offend anyone. But God's not here to make my experience any easier because that hasn't happened. My life has been treacherous, right? But God is here to say, it's okay. I'll give you the hope. I'll give you the faith. I'll give you tomorrow. Just hang in there. It'll get better. And because I believe in God, I believe that there's an energy so much greater than any one person. I call it spirit, I call it mystery, I call it God. Yeah. That I'm going to be okay. Yeah. And I need to have
Yes.
hope. I can't move on without hope. There's nothing else to do. Life is too hard. Yeah. So those are things I didn't get taught in social work school. I was taught, no, you don't touch that. Do not touch religion, politics, or physical beings. Do not touch that.
The taboos.
Those
Mm-hmm.
are taboos. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we already have plenty of things thrown at us as people of color, right? The level of shame, the level of frustration, right? The level of just where do we belong and for how long? Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
Just finding a space for us where we can feel not only like where we belong, but where we're understood as
Yeah.
well. Because we could feel like we belong in a specific space. Like, oh, yeah, these are my people, but they don't quite, they still don't understand everything, the inner workings of me, how or what is the best way for me to heal. And we might not understand that ourselves yet either. So I'm so amazed and
Absolutely.
just
Absolutely.
like just not dumbfounded, but happy that you have been able to find this for yourself, do this work for yourself, realize this is what works for me. And then now, on top of that, you're sharing that with the world, with the community, because desperately needed. Desperately
Absolutely.
needed. People
Absolutely.
tend to think that therapy is just one way, you know, you lay on the couch, you talk for an hour, and then the therapist's like, all right, time's up, it's over, it's done.
Let
But
me share with you,
that's
if I
not the
may,
way.
a little bit of reading from the
Yes.
book. Yeah, that speaks to the uniqueness of the therapy work. Let me just find that page. Here it is. There are many aspects of my intervention style I could share and teach, but some of my gifts had developed because of my personal experiences. I am grateful to be of service to the clients I serve. I see their hearts and I see their pain. Because of what I went through, I can provide them with a sense of hope. I can testify that things get better if they just don't give up. I join them not in their pathology, but in their human beingness. I see them as my siblings. I join them in the way I have wanted others to join me. I see them with respect and honor their process. I know that when someone comes to me, they are vulnerable and they have broken every aspect of their personhood to come and say, I need help,
Mm.
particularly for people of color. We've asked for help throughout generations and we haven't gotten the help. Things have gotten actually worse and more blatant. Yeah. So I have always known that we are all one. I found myself saying this to a client. When a client heals, it heals a part of me and others in whatever circle you're in. When you're healing, you heal 7 generations before you and seven generations after you. It's science. In a system, you move one little sliver, everything shifts, right? And so I'm aware of that and I thank them for allowing me to continue my healing journey. And that's just one of the many meanings. I share my gratitude with my clients for their commitments to healing themselves. I also explain that they are not only healing their lives, but when they commit to healing themselves, they heal past and future generations. They experience my heart, Sade. I cry with my clients. I say, I just got filled with emotions. What's happening for you? Because I was okay before I came on the line, right? Because we are one and we resonate. If I used to work with teenagers some years ago, now I don't. And the teenagers would say, Miss Santa, you feeling me? Hey, I'm feeling you, beloved. I am feeling you because they know when you're feeling them. You could be saying exactly the same thing, but if you're not feeling that person, right? And I feel my clients. My job is to create spaces in people's lives where this can happen. I share my story to help them open up, to reflect, and to be vulnerable. Yeah. And there's much more I can say, but I will say to someone, how is your heart feeling? Oh, it feels hard. It feels closed off. It's like, okay, well, let's open your heart. Let's breathe around it. Yeah, let's make space for it. We know that every single experience we ever had lives in our body. And I found that when I went to therapy, not therapy, when I went to massage school and someone said, turn over onto your belly and started massaging my buttocks. The memories that came up of me being sodomized were
Mm.
overwhelming to the entire, in massage school, you practice with each other and you practice in a room full of massage tables. And the screaming had people coming from outside the hallway to say, what happened?
My goodness.
Right. So I knew. Or when in my first domestic violence job, I told someone who came in with a huge black eye, how do you feel? Did it hurt? And she looked at me like, did it hurt, Miss Thing? This was my first social work job. And then it dawned on me to say to her, why don't you let your eyes speak? Can you just hold it? And this woman spoke about how it was burning, how it was dark, how it stinged, how she couldn't see. Yeah. And the sobbing. For me to ask her, how did it feel when it happened, was irrelevant, right? Because when we're in shock, we don't feel very much. But for me to say to her right here in this moment, what would your eyes say about how it's feeling right now, opened up a whole vacuum. That was instinctual, right? That came from when I got slapped by a parent and I would go and hold my face. And the more I held my face, the more I cried, right? Like the face held the energy, the experience, or the electricity. Like, call it whatever you want. But my face held it. Her eye held the experience, right? So, and if a client, and this is, I'm describing what a holistic psychotherapist is, right? If a client starts talking about how she heard voices, I had a session just yesterday, a new client, young woman. She says, I don't know what's me and what's the orishas or what's the spirits, she said.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been to places where they say I'm schizophrenic. I didn't think she was hearing voices. I know about spiritual visits. I know about, orishas or angels, or I know that's true. But she's been diagnosed with schizophrenia, hearing voices. Yeah. And I was able to say to her, maybe you do have schizophrenia, maybe you do hear voices, but let me tell you, if those voices are saying, care for yourself, be good to yourself, give back to yourself, then those voices are okay. So long as they're not telling you to hurt you or someone else. I could see her do that. She was like, wow, nobody's ever told me that. Yeah,
Yes.
she's 6.
Oh,
And
she's my age.
yeah, she's very young. And I thought, wow, right? How fearful. Yeah. Or for someone to say you're an addict and you need to make amends. I believe in 12-step programs wholeheartedly, right? But for someone to say you're an addict and what you need is 12-step programs and what you need is God, well, I am a believer already. What do you mean what I need is God, right? The messages are so confusing. Why? Because 12-step programs were created by white men who, white Catholic men who needed to repent, who needed to make amends, who had created disasters, right, in their families. So it makes sense that they would make amends to their family. But a 27-year-old who gets drunk every night is suffering, right?
Yes.
And may need to reconnect with God. But that person doesn't have to make an amends. Society betrayed them. And so today, yeah, they drink, they drug, they prostitute because they deserve it, because it's the way they coped, right? Because it's what helped them get through whatever it was they needed to do to survive. Yeah. For me, it's been food, Shade. I don't mind saying I'm a food addict. For me, the struggle of dealing with food, of using it to self-medicate, it's not as serious as heroin or whatever, other people use, but it's an issue, right? That's how we came together after a big fight in my family. My father got drunk, there was major chaos. And then the ladies went in the kitchen and cooked. And then we all ate. It was over until the next time, right? So just being able to say, I'm human, it happens, and you too can get over it. Yeah, that's what holistic therapy is about. It's saying, if you want to pray, we'll pray. You want to drum? I got a djembe. Come on, let's drum. You want to stomp? Get up and stomp. You want to get into a yoga pose? Here's a warrior pose for when you're feeling unsettled. Hold a warrior pose, right? And then
I love that a lot.
With me, what they do. Look at this. I hope I'm not sharing too much. I use crystals.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that red one.
Yeah. Right? And so it's like, what works for you? What do you want? I got it. What works?
Exactly.
Shall we sing? All right, cool. What works for you?
Let's sing out the emotions. I love that a lot.
Yes.
That's why I love when I'm helping inform people about, therapy, like, okay, not every therapy or type of therapy is going to work for you. You might need somebody who prays with you. You might need somebody who allows you to sing or yell at the top of your lungs. I'm currently a coach where I help children with OCD and anxiety, and we don't follow like a very rigid structure. I have one kid who we have named the OCD, and we say that so-and-so is a poop butt because the OCD is a poop butt. That's how he helps, that's how he gets out his frustration and his anger. And his mom was just like, what in the world are y'all doing? But it helps, you know?
Absolutely. Whatever
Um,
helps, right?
whatever helps.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I love the point that you brought up about not all addictions looking the same and being as serious as, drug addiction, because that food point is a real thing I find in Caribbean households, especially like after you get beat or something, or you mad at your parents and you in your room, you on the bed, and then someone open the door, hey, I have food on the table. Like, that's the way of saying
All the
sorry, that's the
pride
way of
goes
making
away, huh?
up.
Yeah, all the pride
Yes.
goes away and we humble ourselves and go eat, right? But then that
Yes.
becomes a problem, right? Where if I'm happy, I eat. If I'm sad, I eat. If I am angry,
Hmm.
I eat, right? And if it tastes good, I'm going to eat it all. That there's
Exactly.
a sense that there's not going to be enough, right?
Exactly.
So some drugs are about escaping the mind, changing the mood, which is food is as well. And others are about, I just can't get enough sweetness. I don't get enough good stuff. I don't know when I'm going to get another good piece of something. So I want to eat it all, take it all in.
Exactly.
Right? It's
It's
been
almost
a
like that
challenge.
scarcity mindset of like you're just
Yes.
taking it all in because you don't know the next time
You
that you're
don't
going to get
know.
it again.
You just don't know. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's a big piece of, yeah, of being a holistic psychotherapist is just being aware that there's so many different possibilities. And I want my clients to, I share what I do, but they don't have to pick any of the things I do, right? I want to know, what do you do? What have you done? Which is the other thing. People show up to therapists, and oftentimes therapists think it's the first time they've ever talked about anything that's challenging. It's like, no, this person has been living, surviving, thriving, even if you don't recognize it as living, surviving, and thriving. So I want to know, Shade, what helps you? What helps to calm your nervous system, right? What helps you to feel safer? And I even go through sharing with people. Some people have very, very limited resources. So, what
Mhm.
helps you could be remembering a time when you were safe, right? The nervous system, which is really what gets impacted when we have a traumatic event, the nervous system does not speak the language of thought or emotion. And I point to these places. Neocortex is where we think from, the part of the brain. The limbic brain is how we feel. But the nervous system, who's regulating all of this reaction, is back here, the thalamus, glands, or they call it the reptilian brain. That only speaks the language of sensation. So you can tell me all you want, but if I'm not getting it, right? Miss Santa, you getting
Exactly.
me? Miss Santa, you get me, right? You feeling me? If that doesn't feel, I'm a little safer, we stay in this hypervigilant, right, response. And so I want to know, what makes you take an out breath? A lot of people talk about inhaling. What helps you exhale? Right? And
I
again,
love that.
it can be a memory. It can even be fantasy. For a long time in my life, I fantasized about being an eagle and flying, just flying above all the chaos, where no one could find me, where no one could touch me, but I could see everything because I'm so hypervigilant, right? Even as an eagle, I'm like,
Exactly.
I see everything. So, what animal do you want to be? That gives you a sense of power and courage, right? Is there a medicine? Is there an herb? Is there a crystal? I have so many clients that say, especially since cannabis got legalized, should I take Prozac or should I take cannabis? Right? And I said, you can take Prozac if you're going to take it. Don't
Hmm.
mess with that stuff, right? And I refer people to psychiatrists all the time. But you know what? If you tell me I want to take cannabis, I'm going to say, okay, do you want to get high? Are you going to use it medically or are you going to use it recreationally? Right?
Exactly.
Because if you want to use it medically, by all means, let's go for that. If you're talking about recreation, be careful because cannabis is addictive. I don't care what anybody
Hmm.
says. Just be mindful, right? So that's what I bring as a holistic psychotherapist is a dialogue about what works for you. What do you need? What have you done? Right? Because you're a survivor. I meet with people, I know they're a survivor. Yeah.
Yes. I love that so much. going back to the book, if you could imprint like one part of the book on people's minds, which part would you try to imprint?
I want to share something with you. This is the part I want to imprint right here. It says, I remember looking at myself in the mirror and saying, hey, darling, look at you. Look at what you dreamed of. Freedom to be, love, and to be loved. A strong warrior woman. Ground your staff and squat to the earth. You did it. It was you that fought the demons. You that kept pulling me out and guiding me. You who kept the faith and allowed for the dreams of someday being free to come through. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. Thanks to you, every aspect of yourself that loves you prostrates her body for you. She releases you from the mission of trauma. She is now with you. We are finally one. Now, put down your staff and rest. Laugh and receive and celebrate. So this work taught me that every aspect of ourselves loves us and thanks us. Our inner selves bow to us, and I was released from my mission of trauma. My authentic self and I were finally one. I did not want to call it a miracle, but it certainly seemed like one. Right? And that's what I want people to take away. Right? That there is a part of me still to this day, and I'll be 62 next month. So still to this day, there's a part of me, I saw that. There's a part of me still, Sade, even this day, where there's a young part of me that's vulnerable. I need to tend to that, right? Because there is such a thing in trauma where our development gets arrested. I was sexually abused that I know of from the age of 10 through the age of 17 by my sister and her husband. Yeah, that's in my story. It's in my book. So there's a young teenager, right, that didn't get to work through what is sexuality, who do I want to be like, who are my models. I didn't do any of that. During that time when I was supposed to be developmentally, organically learning about that, I was trying to figure out how to get out of this house where they were going to kill me. Yeah? So there are developmental arrests. That piece that I read of, in a nutshell, what do I want people to get from my book, is that we are responsible for those parts of us today. Right? I did a lot of what's called inner child work. Go back, Santa. Find that 13-year-old. Ask her what she needs. Ask her what frightens her, right? For a long time, I had great rebellion to dealing with anything that seemed like authority, right? And I had to teach that part of me. I'm not talking about being in a dissociative disorder episode. I'm talking about just teach that part of me that some authority is good. Some authority can be helpful. Not all cops are animals. Some of them are. We know that, right? But not all of them. But I had to teach that. I had to talk to myself. I had to watch what I would say about authority and safety, right? So the inner child work. When I first became sexually active, out of choice, I remember the very first time I had a sexual experience that I chose to have, that I consented to, I cried. I cried and cried and cried, and there was nothing painful about it. But my association to sexual pleasure was pain and hurt. Yeah. I need to heal that part of me. So that's what this says, right? Like, finally, that part of me, that young part of me came out and pulled me out and said, no, we can do this, right? Or maybe the adult in me looked back and said, no, we can do this. I have family, nephews, nieces, great nephews and nieces. We have to stop the generational trauma. We learn this stuff. And we pass it on to the next generation. And we pass it on to the next generation. And I said at a very early age, this can't be all there is. I don't want my nieces to get sexually abused. I don't want my nephews to turn into perpetrators or batterers. And I'm speaking gender, right? This is not gender-based. Remember, 1 in 7 boys get sexually assaulted. So it's more in women, but yeah. So I just, want people to know that there's hope, that we can grow, that we can heal, and that we can give back, right? We can give back. So that's what I feel like I'm doing, giving back.
I love that. I love that. And I definitely agree with you that you are giving back. Like, even doing this interview is giving back. The amount of gems, information, jewels that have been dropped during this alone has just been amazing. I did want to ask, because this memoir, this book has been so, it's literally your life story, so personal to you. It has so much in there. Did you have to go in and use some of your own therapeutic practices and your own methods to try to, keep yourself present while writing the book? Like, how did the process go?
I'll tell you, Shade, I want to say that this book probably was in the making for about 25 years. Because what I thought is that I could just write in my journal. I thought just write in your journal. I did a lot of journaling in my early healing, journaling, coloring. And I thought when I said, I'm going to write my story, right? I thought, first of all, I thought I was going to write a biography. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was going to write about, who wants to read about Santa Molina-Marshall? Like, why do I want a biography? Who knows me, right? So I got clear on that. But I took all of my journals and I transcribed them. And that was my manuscript. I brought that to a writing coach who said to me, all right, you have a story to tell. Maxine Claire, God have her in a good place. Older Black woman. And she said to me, this is an amazing story, but you're writing from your wounds. You're not writing from your scars. And I thought, okay, that's a big lesson. I'll never forget. She said, you don't want people reading this and bleeding to death. There's too many wounds here. How do you tell the story from the perspective that you are no longer there? How do you tell the story from I have tons of scars, right? But I'm no longer wounded. I'm no longer hurting. I'm no longer bleeding. And so that was the beginning. In that relationship, after meeting her, then I started writing a book. We would meet every week, and I would just talk to her. She said, just tell me your story. And then she would take frantically notes on a big legal pad with a pencil. And she would say, now take this and ask yourself, have you done what you're suggesting? Do tears still come to your eyes when you talk about the day you found your mother and father and another woman in the bed together? Which blew me away, right? As an 11-year-old. Does that still blow you away? Because if it does, then you've got some work to do. Right? And so simultaneously, as I was working on the book, just pulling out the wounds from my then cold manuscript and elaborating on what there was, I also had to come to where's the gift? Where's the silver lining? Are you still hurting? What helped you to let go of that? And if not, then what are you going to do? Because you can't be writing about recovery if you haven't been in a recovery program, right? You can't be writing about the challenges of reclaiming your sexuality if you've not cried around the beauty of it, right? Which is what I was crying about. How could something that hurt me so bad, feel so good? Am I going crazy? Is it going to get bad at any moment? I can't write about that if I don't know that there's a way out, right? And so it's not a novel, it's a memoir. And part of the reason why I wrote it, I'll tell you something I want to make sure that I get to share is I also got a little bit just discouraged by the mental health field and the folks who are doing this work. And how, and doing this work meaning trauma work, and how much I had to be careful of how much I say, who I am, what's happened to me, because people would look at me like, oh, you're not healed enough. You're still wounded. You can't do this work. right? So I wanted with this book to say, wounded healers just have to do their work. There's a big joke, I don't know if you've heard it or if it's old, about, social workers are just a bunch of wounded healers trying to heal themselves, right? And maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. I know that was true for me. I didn't know it then, but I knew
The
I had.
joke is still going around.
Yeah, yeah. But there was something about that I said, you know what? I'm not just going to be a wounded healer. I'm going to be a healer that was wounded and is now triumphant. I want to talk about, all the dirt in my family and how I made it through. And so I got a little bit fed up with watching people speak and do workshops and training and yada, 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 but not practice it. And I said, I want to write a book where I say, I've been in this field for 35 years and I have done my work. I've done my work. There's more to do. There's always more to do. But I've done my work, and I know you can do it too. I know that. With the right combination, with the right support, you can do it too, right? And so that was my process of writing this book. And then, the trivial editing for spelling and this and that. But the writing of the book was a consistent meeting with Maxine for about 3 years, every week, until the birth came.
I think the birthing pains of writing the book was definitely well worth it. Just from me looking through it, like I definitely got to buy myself a physical copy. From me looking through it, and I'm just like, this is amazing. It's so well rounded because you do get to see, and you don't get to see this often at all, really, when people are writing about themselves, their lives, their traumas. A lot of the times it still does come from, a unhealed place. It's still wounded place. You're not seeing the scars. You're not seeing, okay, but this is how they made it through. And they actually do sound like, all right, I'm good. I'm better now.
Mm-hmm.
Like this piece of work is just, it's amazing. I love it so much.
There's just so much shame, There's still so much taboo around mental illness, around dysfunctional families, right? I saw a cartoon. I wish I could find it someday. This is years ago. I saw a cartoon. It was a 12-step program. 12-step program for healthy people. There was one person in the meeting. It was like 12-step program for functional families. You know how they have 12-step programs for dysfunctional?
Mm-hmm.
This was like 12-step program for functional families. There was one person in the meeting. And so I always said, I want to work with neurotics. That's what I call me. Right? I want to work with everyday people who are struggling, right, with so much, which is the other thing that's really dear to my heart, is that trauma, again, affects your nervous system, right? So every time I see a red car, if I was violated in a red car, guess what? I'm going to remember my body. Even if I don't have the cognitive memory, my body's going to remember, right? Every time I'm driving down the highway speeding, because I do speed a little bit, and there's a police officer behind me, I hold my steering wheel and I hold my breath, and it's like, oh my God, why? Because I'm so afraid of what may happen if I get stopped.
Yeah.
And the minute they pass, I go, whew, there's my exhale. My body remembers what I see in the news, what's happening in my neighborhood. My body remembers all the young people who have died. Right? My body remembers what's happening overseas right now, every time, right? So we need to be very mindful of what we take in, what we tell ourselves, how we treat ourselves. Do we pick up where our perpetrators left off? Right? When I'm pushing myself too hard, I have to say, hey, little Santa, I'm going to give you a break, girl. Let's go downstairs. Let's go play. Let's go see how the doggies are doing. Right? I have to, because I forget her. Right? We're not encouraged to remember parts of us that may need attention. especially as social workers, right? Everybody else needs time and attention. Yeah,
Putting everybody before your own. It's
absolutely.
basically servant leadership, essentially, where it's just like you are serving others, but servant leadership to the max, where it's like, yeah, you're dead last. Like,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
oh, you need a break. Hold on, because these people need housing. These people need some food. They need this, they need that. It was a lot. I had gotten burnt out already a few years ago because it was just so much.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I will definitely be going through this book again and using this almost as like a blueprint to make sure that I'm tending to myself and paying attention to
Please
myself
do.
and doing
Please,
that work.
please do. Yeah.
Yes.
And doing your own work, there's nothing like, I think, I used to think that therapy was a luxury for white people. Then I've realized that we should all have someone, right? Whether
Yes.
it's a pastor, a good parent, a good friend who can just sit and say, okay, I'm here to listen, and then reflect back. What they think you can deal with, that's what I do. I don't just break people open, right? It's like, what can her nervous system handle today, right? And how do I know what they can handle? Because they'll start twitching or moving or twirling the hair. They'll start, right? And it's like, okay, what's happening in your body? We can take a break. So there are two terms that I use in my work. One is titration. We take little pieces, tiny little pieces of traumatic stories, memories, experiences. I don't want to overwhelm you all over again. And the reality is that the traumatic event was a trauma because it caught you by surprise. I mean, traumatic events are traumatic events, period, right?
Mhm.
But why it has such a great impact is because it caught you by surprise, because there was nobody there to say, I can help you. Yeah. And because it left you in that, right? Because for people of color, and this is really important to me, we don't always get believed, right? We don't always get the help after that we deserve, right? So we're stuck in this state of hyperarousal or what we call activation. So taking little pieces at a time, I say, I want to hear your entire story, but I want to hear it with you being present, with you taking breaths, with you stopping to cry. And you know how we do, particularly us women of color. I'm going to tell
Mhm.
you like it not bothering me and then go home or go in the car and break down. Right? No, I want that to happen in a regulated way. So regulation, titration, and then let's pendulate. And talk a little bit about my assault, and then we're going to talk about the day I went to the beach. We're going to talk a little bit about, how that person beat me up, and then we're going to talk a little bit about ice cream. Like we're going in and out. Staying in the traumatic experience for too long just because the therapist, I want to hear your entire story is not helpful to you.
Exactly.
It's just another overwhelm, right? So that's really important in doing the work, tending to the nervous system. I've got so much I can say about that. Yeah. But that's the
I
work.
love
Yeah.
that. Yes. Yes. So if people are interested in working with Miss Santa, are you taking on new clients at this time, or is it busy season? How are we doing?
Unfortunately, ever since COVID, it's been a busy season. I thought, oh my God, COVID, what am I going to do? This is my livelihood. And unfortunately, there's just been an influx. But I do have openings for new clients. And you can just email at hpbysanta@gmail.com. hpbysanta@gmail.com. You can also call me at 301-537-6091. And my latest offering is that I have a community online that meets twice a month. And its title and how you would find it is www.fromtraumatotriumph.net. Fromtraumatotriumph.net. And we meet twice a month to talk about how we're doing now that we recognize you're a survivor, man. You're triumphant. How do we keep it up? Yeah. So that's my offering these days, right? Like, let's just gather and talk about wellness. Yeah. Because that's the
Yeah.
other thing we do a lot in the mental health field is talk a lot about the issues, right? And then my clients come in and tell me, oh, I went out. I had a great time. It's like, oh, well, let's talk about that. Because that's the other thing, right? Do we focus enough from back here, from the reptilian brain, on what is working in our life? Right? Like the nervous system is, its main job is to capture what feels like a threat. That's its main job, right? It doesn't look for joy. It doesn't look for resiliency. So we need to do that. We need to have a practice of joy, of celebrating, of bragging about what is.
Yes.
Yes? Yeah.
Yes. I love it.
Thank you. Great
And I'm
question.
gonna plug in your Instagram because I
Okay.
checked it out the other day and I love it. She has a whole bunch. If you're still not ready to take the plunge into therapy, definitely check out her her videos on Instagram, her reels, because they are so informative. They are
Yeah,
amazing. Her Instagram is at Santa Molina-Marshall, so just your name, right?
that's right.
Um,
That's right.
and then I don't know, is your TikTok still up? Because I was looking for it,
Yes,
but I
that's
couldn't find
TikTok.
it.
Absolutely. And that's HP psychotherapy. HP psychotherapy.
Got it. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna find you.
Yes, please
Not in
do.
a creepy way, but
And share it, Yeah, and share it. Share it too.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But thank you
One more
so
thing about the
much.
book.
Yes.
20 pages of questions and answer at the back. So great book if you want to read it and then do like a little book club, or 20 questions and answers. How does
I
being an
love
immigrant,
it.
look at what I just opened up to. How does being an immigrant influence the potential of being sexually abused?
Boom. My goodness.
We'll
My
stop there.
goodness. Because this is the stuff that we need to talk about. This is the stuff that they do not teach in class.
They
They don't
don't.
talk about on the news. It's not being discussed. But I love that you include that in your book as well, as just at least having the opportunity to have that discussion. I
Yeah,
love it. I love
yeah.
it so much.
Yay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for coming on, Miss Santa Molina Marshall,
Mhm.
author, therapist, warrior, everything. Yes, we love it.
Praises go up. Yes. Thank you
Yes.
so
So,
much. And thank you for wanting to join the movement of healers, supporters, therapists. Thank you.